The Browns, even though they are an extremely, extremely young team, that is not an excuse or fix that this team is going to be able to use or carry for the entirety of the 2025 season. The team is going to need to improve on both sides of the ball, to be fair. Otherwise, this organization, this front office, this ownership may be forced to have some conversations that they were not planning on having. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate each and every one of you who come to the OBR, whether it's for the best Cleveland Browns written daily content at theobr.com. While you're there, I highly suggest you look into the VIP package. Insider forums, ask the insiders. Your subscription gets bundled with a subscription to Paramount Plus. A couple good things for a small, small amount a month. Thanks to everybody for their continued support here for the OBR streaming network, beginning every night at 6 p.m. Eastern with Browns 3D. Had the gang of three on Monday night. You had Joe and Pete last night. After us, you will get Mike Keefe and Fred Greetham sitting down with one of the local Cleveland Browns beat writers. And then, of course, to cap off the evening, Garage Beers with Mike, Keefe, and gang. Make sure you're subscribed to the OBR on YouTube. And, of course, make sure you're subscribed to the OBR on Twitch. From practice today, Jack Conklin out of practice, concussion. Gage Lavardane out of practice, concussion. David Njoku, knee, not practicing today, although Kevin Stefanski did seem kind of promising with his words about the veteran tight end. And Myles Garrett was not seen on the practice field at the time made available to the media. Had a great week last week. Who needs to practice, right? Now, the Browns, as they start to get into Miami Dolphin week, home Sunday against the Dolphins. And obviously, this is the time where we were outside of that 6-week window where everyone felt maybe things would be a little bit more of a level playing field for the Cleveland Browns. As great of a thing that it is for the Browns that they have this tremendously deep amount of rookies who are contributing in year one, there certainly needs to be improvement from this group collectively. And all of this youth, it's got to lead to something. You know, winning 1, 2, 3 games, but saying everybody's young, it may sound like a nice theory, but almost all of these rookies have been basically playing since week 1 and playing extensive minutes. It's not just the youth and the fact that they're young is going to be a be-all, end-all, save-all for everybody. These guys need to start improving and having some impact. I don't know necessarily that, a finger's being pointed at Quinshon Judkins when I make a statement like that. Q's been fantastic to this point, other than a real rough week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where the Steelers just absolutely 110% committed to taking Quinshon Judkins and the Cleveland Browns running game out of existence. And they absolutely did. Mason Graham, certainly, there could be more. And everything we've seen to Mason Graham, of Mason Graham to this point, tells you the potential is there and it's there in spades. And I know myself and Pete Smith, we talk about the transition of playing, whether it's interior offensive line or interior defensive line, going from college to the NFL is probably the most difficult transition there is among position wise, going from college to the NFL. I think the early returns are more than okay on Mason Graham. Definitely feel that there's also improvement that could be there for Mason Graham. The young buck of this Browns defense and this Browns defensive line, which were perfectly game planned against last week by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and essentially took away, the strength of the Browns defense away from them. So both sides of the ball, the Browns basically had the best attribute that they have as a group collectively taken away from them on the offense and, of course, the defensive side of the ball. Schlesinger's just fantastic. I don't know if there's really anything more deeper you can use for that. It's Carson Schlesinger's going to be a really special player for this team. Now, again, though, I mean, you're playing, and most likely, I guess it would be trendy that Lavardane is not going to play this week. But, there's certain players that, it just needs to become the performance at a better level. And I would say Isaiah Bond is definitely one of these rookies that, you would think about when you make a statement like that. And this is where Bond was always going to be tricky. And this isn't even, counting what happened as far as, what ultimately led to him not even being drafted. Great talent, Isaiah Bond. Ridiculously good talent from Alabama and Texas. But production matters. And the one thing that was certainly lacking in his draft resume was just overall production. So now here's a guy, and, I guess he flirted with being a starter at both Alabama and Texas. And look, both these schools just play so many wide receivers. It's really, truly hard to define someone as the starter. But, here he is now thrust upon being a number two in an NFL offense, where the production you would expect from him in a season is basically what his 3 years of collegiate production was. So Isaiah Bond, as much as it is great that the Browns have given him this opportunity, it's got to start to show some results. Yes, he was only in college for 3 years, but, 2 years at Bama, 1 year at Texas. The transition from those schools to the NFL should not be that, arduous. You know, Not looking for the ball, in what should have been his first NFL touchdown reception Sunday is, it's egregious to say the least. And the Browns are certainly lucky that ball found turf as opposed to the hands of a Pittsburgh Steelers defensive back. Dylan Sampson certainly falls into this group as well. I think, the week one Dylan Sampson, everybody was like, okay, well, Q wasn't there. But I think we all were like, all right, well, once Q does get here, man, this rookie backfield, both of these guys, straight, ready to produce. And I don't think Dylan Sampson has produced as much yardage since week one as he did in week one. I know with talking with people, the Browns, are still working Dylan Sampson through what they feel is, adequate pass protection, which is an absolute necessity, of course. And it's always a difficult transition for a rookie to the NFL and pass pro. But here was a guy that was certainly a huge part of the offense in week one, and now just can't seem to get the same type of run or match that same type of production. This could be a really interesting week for Harold Fannin if David Njoku does not make his way to the field for Sunday's game, even though Coach Stefanski, I would say, sounded pretty positive, I would guess. Because teams are starting to gear up for Harold Fannin. It's not hard to watch the film. It's not hard to look at, the numbers and, see, just how frequently he is targeted, how many receptions he has versus the rest of the teammates on this Cleveland Browns roster. So he's going to be the next one, Harold Fannin. Is going to be the next one that, teams are going to absolutely 100% try to take away. Now, does Fannin grow through this, which will just go a long way for improving, his possible production output for years to come? Or, does it get difficult when, you're trying to be taken out? Fanning's been special to this point. I mean, we can bring up that one drop, obviously, from last week, and I know there's another drop. I forget it was week 1 or maybe week 3. But Fannin is certainly a guy who's got all the talent in the world and certainly a really, really strong route runner for being just 21 years old. Well, certainly with the expectation of getting, all this young skill on offense to improve is certainly contingent on the offensive line. And for Cam Robinson's sake, it looks like he dodged a bullet, did get out to the practice field today, did a couple of things. Certainly the penalties need to be cleaned up. But the Browns, and in their investment in bringing in Cam Robinson, and I really think Cam Robinson, as much as this was an attempt at a 2025 thing, I really think this is very similar to Tevin Jenkins in that, here were veterans that the Cleveland Browns maybe liked and maybe like with a little bit longer shelf life than just a season. Both were brought in and are going to be given, Cam Robinson. Obviously, it's no question he's the starting left tackle. Tevin Jenkins is a little bit more murkier, as there is no real path for playing time for him right now. But I believe the belief on both of these guys was to get them in there with, the thought process of trying to gauge as much as you possibly could into, trying to prolong the relationship, certainly for Tevin Jenkins and certainly for Cam Robinson beyond 2025. We all, and it's funny, I mean, everybody seems so much willing to talk about this now when I was one of the few all late spring and early summer kept saying, this offensive line, even if it's good this year, there are major, major issues because they are looking at a rebuild for 2026. Not sure how everybody just got to that talking point now, but sure, whatever. So Cam Robinson, and the thing with Cam Robinson is actually the on-field play hasn't been terrible. If you can get past the penalties, and it's hard to get past the penalties. I mean, he's played maybe 5 quarters worth of football, and I think it's 4 penalties to this point. Just an absolute staggering amount, of course. I mean, some of it you kind of get because he's here late, but some of them, you know, you don't really want to give that excuse because it's just been a collective thing with this Browns offense, among their offensive line. And it's certainly not a 2025 thing. This has been going on for a few years now. So they need to improve to hopefully allow, more time for things to develop for all these young skill players. And of course, you know, you can't have that conversation with at least right now talking about Dylan Gabriel Kinda hard to talk about Shedeur Sanders because we don't have anything to talk about. I think Dylan Gabriel, I think, has played better than I think people are making it out to be. Hasn't turned the ball over yet. 2 starts in. That's pretty impressive for a rookie quarterback. Took 6 sacks last week. Could have been 9. His accuracy, which was supposed to be one of the overall strengths of Dylan Gabriel's game, is not there. So that's certainly been an issue. You just got to work on getting people in the numbers. But that being said, when you're facing a lot of pressure and you have some skill players who are underperforming, you're getting drops from Jerry Jeudy, you're getting drops from David Njoku. I mean, you can kind of understand some of the mistakes from all the other guys who are rookies. The drops from a David Njoku and a Jerry Jeudy, those are just killer right now. Those are the guys that are supposed to be counted on to make this whole thing go. Needs to certainly get fixed. Now, in a team like Miami coming in on Sunday, this is 2 teams probably exactly in the same scenario. Although I think, both coaches, it's probably felt about a different way. For the Dolphins, once it goes south and it's still the same quarterback and it's still the same head coach, kind of gets hard to believe that, something's going to get rectified to the point where this team all of a sudden gets back to maybe where they were 2 years ago, this Dolphins team. And I think this would, it was kind of trending this way, I think, for Miami because it was working well for them and they were just, compiling yards with all these speed performers. And then you get defenses just trying to basically, give some ground and understanding they're just not going to get torched by all this speed. So you end up playing a little bit more of a prevent style defense throughout the game just because it's, make them go 10, 11, 12, play drives as opposed to, 2 plays for 85 yards. Devin Shane is interesting. And this is going to be a really good matchup, I think, for this Cleveland Browns defense this week. And especially the linebackers. The linebackers played extremely well, of course. But, in order to contain a guy like Devin Shane, it takes a true combined defensive effort of everybody following their assignment to the letter. Your contained guys absolutely have to contain him. You can just not let him get a straight run to the outside. Because if that's the case, it's over. You don't catch Devin Shane from behind. Carson Swessinger, like this is probably, another one in the line of, a lot of big tests that he's seen so far this year and a couple more to come. But I mean, if Carson Swessinger can show that he can go side to side with one of the fastest running backs in the NFL, I mean, the conversations of just how good he is and just how much potential he has are over. Just a very, very special talent who, again, just, laid in waiting at UCLA until somebody, finally realized and gave him the opportunity and never looked back after that. It's obvious that so many people got upset with Coach Stefanski from getting away from the running game last week. It wasn't working. You fell behind. And you fell behind into the mid late third quarter to where you were behind, mid to late third quarter, fourth quarter, to where you were behind 2 touchdowns. There was no up. You don't at that point just say, "Hey, well, maybe we can get the running game going again." It doesn't work that way. You know, I think if we all asked Kevin Stefanski collectively, no, his thought was not to drop back Dylan Gabriel 58 times. His thought was not to have Dylan Gabriel throw 52 passes. Now, of course, this week when you're facing the Miami Dolphins, who are the 32nd ranked run defense, that's not a question. The ball needs to be run, and it needs to be run for hopefully a large advantage for this Cleveland Browns offense. Early weather reports show that, rain could be a factor. Warm, north of 65. And it's not necessarily so much an issue of the rain. It would be the rain and cold, but we're not necessarily there yet in Northeast Ohio. But when you're facing a team that is 32nd run defense, the script writes itself. You need to run the ball. Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, double digits each, 30 times between the two. You need to get a win. This team drastically needs a win. You need everybody to get a little bit more, at ease. Everybody to start feeling maybe a tad bit more confident about themselves. Everybody got all up in arms about the record after the first 6-game stretch, and I get it. I do. But it just seems odd when everybody was cringing at the thought of that first 6-game stretch for the entirety of the time. And then when it was here, granted, it is 1-5. Conceivably, a couple things changed. Could have been 3-3. But what was supposed to be a difficult stretch that had everybody so up in arms and so nervous about this franchise, the fact that they weren't successful during that 6-game stretch, now all of a sudden everybody's ready to nuke the entire place in Berea and get rid of everybody. You want to get back to simplicity. And certainly a lot of it's going to come down to this defense. So obviously this team, just needs to get out there and feel good about themselves. This defense needs to start harassing the quarterback again. I mean, over the last 3 weeks, Malik Collins has been the Browns' most important defensive lineman. Never in my life would I have thought I would have said that somebody was a more important defensive line player for the Cleveland Browns over a 3-game stretch than Myles Garrett. But yet, here we sit. And certainly it's Jerry Jeudy as well on the offensive side. The Browns, and they certainly did try against Pittsburgh to get Jerry Jeudy going early. But I think you have to get to this place where is Jerry Jeudy and what he did in 2024 an absolute mirage? Like, which one is it? Is his best year in Denver the real Jerry Jeudy? Was the 2024 version the real Jerry Jeudy? There's certainly, going to be some upgrades probably coming to that wide receiver room after the season. But this team could certainly be a lot better this season if Jerry Jeudy just starts playing a little bit more to his abilities that we all saw last year. And we can't really use the last 2 weeks with Dylan Gabriel starting as, an excuse for Judy because Jerry Judy wasn't doing anything really the first 4 weeks with Joe Flacco starting. Even if, Gabriel right now is throwing with some limited vertical game to him, of course, which is certainly a big hamper, and everybody knows my stance on this, and it drives me crazy that this team just doesn't throw the ball. Doesn't throw the ball deep at all. And it's not even they don't throw it deep. I wouldn't even say they use the mid game. So, I mean, all you're doing is we're relying on run after the catch or yards after the catch. It was an extremely difficult way to put together drives and to continuously be able to put points on the board. And you're kind of putting your quarterback in a spot for asking for perfection in a death of 1,000 paper cuts passing game. Extremely difficult to succeed that way. I know I've seen out there that a lot of people are kind of like looking at this like it's a walk the plank game. That if either McDaniels loses or if Stefanski loses, it's over. See, you wouldn't want to be you for each. And no, I'm not positive on that. I certainly can't speak enough on Miami's side of it. I know it's not going very well for Miami. And I have a hard time believing Kevin Stefanski, even if he were to be fired, is going to be fired in the middle of the season. This Browns team needs to perform and needs to perform in all three phases. And consistency needs to be there. And I know it's only myself and a few others out there. Quincy Carrier is another one of them. And just because the offense is struggling as much as they are, then they are. Let's not ignore that, of course. Doesn't mean that the defense gets a pass. And no, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, the defense, I'm not one of those saying, oh, if the defense, you have to get a shutout. I'm not asking for that. But prime example, last week, defense gets a stop. Special teams, even if I thought the penalty was horseshit, gets a roughing the kicker, running into the kicker, which gives Pittsburgh a new set of downs, led to a touchdown. All three phases playing in unison. Guess we're going back to the Brown Unis this week. All right. They're 1-0 in Brown uniforms. Might as well bring them back. And if they win it again this week, just contact the league and say, we'll pay whatever fine we're going to pay, but we want to wear them every single week. This team needs to improve. This team needs to play like a team. And, as I opened with, if you can't start getting better, having an 11, 12 deep rookie class all contributing, it's not going to save jobs. It's got to turn into some victories. It's great to say, oh, we got a bunch of young guys. What's the point? If it's not leading to something and the product maybe is looking worse as opposed to looking better, those calling for jobs, whether I think they're right or wrong, are not necessarily wrong for calling for people's jobs. There's got to be improvement. And it's got to start this week against the Dolphins. Always appreciate all of you for the support for all of us here at the OBR. Heading on over to the OBR.com for just, in my opinion, the best Cleveland Browns written coverage there is. While you're there, looking at the VIP package, insider forums, ask the insiders, have your subscription bundled with Paramount Plus for a small fee. You get 2 great products. And everybody who continues to support us here at the OBR Streaming Network. Again, none of this happens without you. After us here the evening, Fred Greetham, Mike Keefe, sitting down with one of the Cleveland Browns beat writers. Capping that night off, of course, will be Mike Keefe and the cast of cronies with the Garage Beers podcast. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, Browns, 3D on the OBR streaming network. And we will talk to y'all tomorrow.